We are just 2 weeks out from the NHL Draft, and the Flames have to use this pick wisely as they continue through their little rebuild, retool, transitional phase.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jessica Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I thought today we could kind of look ahead to see who the Flames may pick at 18 and dive into how this choice that they make is important, yes, for the future of the team, but also for how they choose to construct their roster this season. And of course, I thought it would be a blast to follow up with some of that more transitional talk with some trade proposals that I found online that I found to be rather interesting. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And let's jump into this because we are just 2 weeks away from the NHL Draft. It's hard to believe that we're already here. I was looking at the calendar, and the Flames have not played a game in almost 2 months. Here we are. We're finally at the Stanley Cup final. We are approaching the draft, and we're finally getting a real feel for the free agent market. What's it going to take for teams to sign Mitch Marner? What's it going to take, for Sam Bennett to agree to a contract? How big of a payday is Brad Marchand going to get? But that's really not on the Flames, front. It's not at the front of their mind right now. They have to worry about the future. And that comes with this draft. And that's not to say that they're not focused and in on free agency, obviously, but I don't think that they are going to be swinging for the fences with players like Ekblad and Marner and Sam Bennett. I do not see that happening. But the Flames have 2 first-round picks. They have the 18th overall, which we're going to talk about today, which came from New Jersey in the Jacob Markstrom trade, as well as pick 31 or 32, depending on how the Cup final finishes, from the Matthew Tkachuk trade. They do not have their own first-round pick. They gave their pick to Montreal back in the Sean Monahan trade, and it's the 16th overall pick. So right in the mushy middle where the Flames tend to fall. And I think you can look at this with glass half empty rather than glass half full, but I don't think that that's necessarily productive. There are absolutely times to criticize the Flames. 100%. There's times to criticize every team. And I think the Flames are continuing down this path, and they're looking to build themselves a competitive hockey team, and that doesn't happen overnight. I say it all the time, but Rome wasn't built in a day, and undoing a decade plus of contracts and draft picks and Brad Treliving's mistakes, let's call it what it is, takes more than 2 or 3 off seasons. And last year was Craig Conroy's first draft at the helm. The year before, it was still Don Maloney and that group. And now last season, it transitioned over to Conroy, Iginla, and his crew. And I think that everyone is aware a year later that it appeared that the Flames hit it out of the park, which was so encouraging and so exciting because it felt as if that was another positive step in this rebuild, and whatever you're comfortable calling it. Because I feel like if I call it a rebuild, people aren't happy. And if I call it a retool, people are like, that's not aggressive enough. So whatever, the reconstruction period. And since Conroy did such a good job last year, I have faith that this year is going to be similar. It may not be as good. Draft classes, obviously, the talent varies year to year, especially when you're picking. But let's talk about the 18th overall pick, because most people have the Flames selecting Ben Kindel of the Calgary Hitmen. He's a right shot forward who plays both wing and center, and he had 99 points with the Hitmen this season. I think adding a right shot forward to this group would be wonderful, because if you look at the roster now, obviously the roster is going to be different by the time he cracks the NHL, but it's left, and then like one right shot in Coronado. I'm pretty sure. So it's adding, a little versatility there would be pretty neat. Especially, for a guy who puts up 99 points. The Hitmen were a really good team. They played really well in the playoffs. I actually got to go to the playoffs games. It was a lot of fun. But they have to be smart about this. And Kindle seems to be on everyone's radar as a pick, like in that that makes sense. Number one, that makes sense for Calgary, but also that appears to be in that section. The other player is Braeden Cootes, who exclusively plays center. That, to me, chef's kiss, because the Flames are in desperate need of centers. Yeah, okay, let me rewind. Young centers that they can continue to build around. We know that the Flames don't necessarily have an established center in Zary, in Sharon Govich. Morgan Frost is still figuring things out. Kadri's not going to be on your team forever, and neither is Michael Backlund. So you're going to have to find players that are young and you can mold and develop and push them to the next level and integrate them into your system. But the issue at this very moment that we're going to talk about next is this log jam that is happening at every position except goaltender. That log jam got figured out last summer, so hopefully we can continue to make some moves. And coming up next, we'll talk about those moves and how what they do in 2 weeks and then free agency ultimately impacts where this team will be in 3 years. Next on Locked On Flames. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. A coworker was talking to me about the Oilers-Panthers game and how he bet $10 on the Oilers winning and a Draisaitl anytime goal, and he cashed out big. So get in on the fun. It can be before the game or during the game. That's what I love about FanDuel. To just throw $10 at your favorite team, even though they're down, 3-0. Sure, why not? FanDuel makes it fun. New to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, your Calgary Flames every day. And speaking of every day, I feel like we talk about this every day. And I think that just shows you how pressing of an issue it is. And it is great that the Flames have a good group of forwards. And a number of players to choose from. That is always that's something you like to see, because you can obviously have more possibilities and variety and variations and ultimately find what sticks. But the moves you're making right now impact your future. And it's not about these guys immediately jumping into the Flames lineup, because I don't think the Flames have any players like that right now. And where they're picking in the draft, I find it very unlikely that they find a player and they just don't have an opening. They just don't have an opening for someone to slot right in. You have to make counter moves to your roster in some capacity. Now, I'm not saying they have to be, if you draft a center, you have to trade out a center, or, oh, you draft a defenseman, so you have to shift a defenseman here. No. To me, you are planning for 2 seasons down the line. And right now, there are a surplus of forwards and kind of defensemen as well, really, if you're looking at it, that need to find new homes. And it's like the Flames are trying to stuff more stuffing into a pillow and sew it back up, but the seams keep bursting. Because you have, like I mentioned before, Sharon Govich, Zary, Morgan Frost, who need to figure out who they are as players. And there are still players that are developing that, ultimately deserve a shot at the line at the NHL level, so you can figure out who they are. You don't have enough centers, or that's a lie. You have enough centers, but you don't have enough openings for the centers you have. And ultimately, you have to trade and move on from these players. Not all of them. But why? What is the point of holding on to Ryan Lomberg other than vibes? Ryan Lomberg seems like a great player, a great locker room mouth. That's how, a great voice. That's the word I was looking for. But ultimately, if you have a younger, fast, Lombo is pretty fast, but a younger player that can play at a cheaper price and potentially bring more production to the lineup, why are you preventing him from taking that step to the NHL? Because this guy makes people in the room happy? He's a fourth liner. It's not like he's Connor McDavid. You know what I mean? And I hate saying this, but in the words of Abby Lee Miller, everybody is replaceable. So if you have to trade a fourth liner and move on from a fourth liner, you move on from a fourth liner. Same thing with 6th, 7th, and 8th defensemen. Jake Bean, bye. Can be traded too. Miramonov could be traded. Joel Hanley, if he walks in free agency, he walks in free agency. It's not the end of the day. Braeden Pahal, you want to get traded? Great. I'm not worried if the Flames make any trades this summer. I'm not worried if this player leaves in free agency. They have to start weeding out the extras. And it's not just extras. It's not like these players aren't of value to the team. It is just, number one, moving on from older players and getting something in return. And I know it's always, well, you shouldn't trade away your veterans. If this player said he wants to be here, of course. I don't think there's really been a player in recent seasons, other than Seth Jones in Chicago earlier this season, who basically said, I'm good. I don't want to be here. I'm out. I'm over it. If there probably has been, but nothing is coming to mind. But I don't believe anyone has vocally come out and said that or answered a question with that. But to me, if Blake Coleman can fetch you a 3rd round pick, okay, great. And I know people are going to say, why would you want to move on from Kadri? As a fan, I don't. I think Kadri is a fantastic player to watch. I think he's a great mentor. I have fun watching him. But if I can get a high-end roster player, a prospect, a first and a second, and he agrees to go, since I believe he has a modified no-trade clause, okay. It's not about winning right now. And I think that's where the vision gets lost. Because, yes, people get bummed out that the Flames aren't picking higher up. But then it gets countered with, well, why aren't you happy that the Flames are winning? And it's not the same type of winning that, let's say, Winnipeg is doing. Dallas has been doing. Florida. Tampa. Edmonton. I'd say the Leafs, but I don't know if they really count. But regular season winning is very different. And when your team can't score more than 3 goals a night and goes 8 games without scoring more than 3 goals, you're not talking about the playoffs. And you need to look at this and say, well, shoot, how do we fix this problem? Because it is a problem. You have too many forwards. You need to find players for the next 3, 4, 5 years, whether they're draft picks or prospects or roster play or higher end prospects. You have to find players that are going to be able to score and that complement, let's say, Morgan Frost, Matt Coronado, Connor Zary. Really Matt Coronado, because he's the only one that's on a long-term deal that's realistically going to be here, besides Jonathan Huberdeau, who is signed until the third ice age hits. But in all seriousness, right now is the perfect time to be trading your excess forwards so you can cash in with draft capital. Because ultimately, that's how the Flames are going to need to land a 1C. Nazem Kadri is not going to be your 1C in 3 years. Or when you're truly ready to compete, which could be 4 years from now. But coming up next, we're going to talk about moving on from some of these players and some funny armchair GM proposals that I wrote about on over at the win column here on Locked On Flames. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I think we've all been in a position where you know that your team needs to hire someone immediately, probably like yesterday or the day before that, or maybe 3 weeks ago. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Jess Belmosto. I do a weekly series over on the Win Column, which is a great blog, if I do say so myself, that Flames coverage. And I started this weekly series because I think being an armchair GM, as I am 5 days a week, allows me to criticize other armchair GMs. And some of these make sense, others do not. Let's start with one that makes sense. Jake Bean to Seattle for Seattle's 2026 third-round pick. I think that there are pieces in the wings that would be great additions to this roster immediately. Obviously, if you add Zane Parekh and Hunter Brusewich, they're right-handed defensemen. But that allows you some flexibility on the left side too, to kind of, make moves that just make the most sense, integrating one, if not both of them. This is another one that I mentioned before, and it's Ryan Lomberg to Columbus for Pittsburgh's 2026 sixth round pick. Sure. Again, there are a lot of players that should be playing on the fourth line over Ryan Lomberg. Martin Pospisil, maybe even Adam Klapka, are both players that should be playing on the fourth line. Adam Klapka is not a first line center or first line forward. He's not a top line player. Let's be a little bit more serious with our roster construction moving forward. So, Ryan Lomberg, I hope you like Columbus. I hear there's good breweries in Columbus. And good, unexpected, what's the word? Culture. It's a lively city. This one I like, mainly because, once again, we are filtering out some of the older veteran players that the Flames have, they've given it all to the Flames as much as they could. But it's time to move on. The Flames are in a different stage of the organization than they were when this player originally signed their contract, and the player has been vocal about that. And that would, of course, be Blake Coleman. So this is another player going to Columbus. So I'm assuming that a Blue Jackets fan got a little bored and went on Puckpedia to do some armchair GM trades. But this is Columbus sending their next year's first round pick to Calgary for Blake Coleman. The Flames trade up with Florida's pick and package it with Blake Coleman to Columbus for pick number 20 and draft Cole Reshney. Sure. I like that. I think that's, a good... I think that's a good thing. Obviously, Blake Coleman has a modified no-trade list. Great. Let's say he waives it. Chris Kreider waived his, so maybe Blake Coleman waives his. I think it just, again, gives you more flexibility with your forward group, which ultimately you're looking for, and you get another first-round draft pick. This is one that I like. I see Miramonov as a player that they move on from, probably by trading him or packaging him in a trade. Kind of the same way that Matt Dumba is being packaged, likely in any Dallas trade this summer. So Montreal receives Miramonov, and the Flames receive the Canadiens' 2026 third-round pick. He is just... I think his time with the Flames has come to an end. I think that he did well. He played up in the lineup a lot, and he struggled big time with Mackenzie Weegar, which earned him a demotion and most nights to be a healthy scratch. So ultimately, there's no sense in keeping him around if he's just taking up a spot in the press box. Him and Jake Bean, both of them, there are younger and better players that can slide in. Then let's see. This one makes absolutely no sense to me. And that would be Morgan Riley and Pontus Holmberg and Toronto's 2028 first round pick for Nazem Kadri. Morgan Riley is 31 years old and has 4 years left on his current contract. Makes no sense for the Flames to bring him in when they are trying to trade 29-year-old Rasmus Anderson. Could be a cap dump, kind of like the Flames did. They dumped Sean Monahan's contract onto Montreal to acquire Nazem Kadri, so Toronto is repaying us with Morgan Riley's cap dump. We want the defense to get better. I don't think that it makes sense for the Flames to trade for Morgan Riley. And I understand they're not necessarily trading for him, but if there were other pieces involved in that trade that did not involve Morgan Riley and maybe a different player, I may entertain it. I don't think that it is something that I don't think Brad Treliving is calling Craig Conroy. I don't. I don't see Craig Conroy calling Brad Treliving to make something happen. I don't think that either team. No, I think Toronto has things that the Flames want, but nothing that they'd ever give up or have at like valuable enough assets to send back. But to me, using pick 18 to get a center is the most realistic and positive outcome. I think that it allows you a little bit more time, obviously, to figure out your current forward group, start weeding out some players, and collecting more draft picks, because ultimately that is what you're going to have to do. We know the Flames are not going to be able to acquire a top line center through a trade or free agency based on the market. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, as these 2 weeks leading up to the draft could be very entertaining or just be a little bit of a stalemate from everyone. Make sure you are following me wherever you get this podcast. Make sure you're following the show wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We're here for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Your Calgary Flames every day. And I will be back on Monday, hopefully with some fun news and some sort of clearer direction for what the Flames are doing in free agency.